The United States has imposed travel restrictions on members of the Palestinian Authority, accusing them of undermining peace efforts with Israel. Meanwhile, US officials are trying to salvage ceasefire talks between Israel and Hamas after the last round of negotiations stalled in recent weeks. US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff met the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in Jerusalem on Thursday. The White House has confirmed that Mr. Witkoff will travel into Gaza later today to inspect the food distribution sites operating there. President Trump reflected on the situation in Gaza in a press briefing on Thursday.
Oh, it's terrible what's occurring there, yeah. It's a terrible thing. People are very hungry. You know, the United States gave $60 million for food, and it's a shame because nobody, I don't see the results of it. And we gave it to people that in theory are watching over it fairly closely. We wanted Israel to watch over it. Part of the problem is Hamas is taking the money and they're taking the food. But we gave $60 million a couple of weeks ago. Nobody said anything about it. Nobody said thank you. But I didn't need the thank you. I just wanted the people to get fed. And we're helping out financially with that situation. It's a terrible situation.
Well, a reminder that an analysis compiled by USAID officials examining more than 150 reported incidents involving the theft or loss of US-funded humanitarian aid in Gaza says it failed to find any evidence that Hamas engaged in widespread diversion of assistance. The funds provided by the US for aid to Gaza are put into the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, the controversial armed private aid operation backed by the US and Israel. More than 1,000 Palestinians have been killed by Israeli forces since May while trying to get food in the Gaza Strip, mostly near aid sites run by the GHF. A number of aid agencies operating inside Gaza say the GHF is a death trap. Well, on the US envoy visits to Israel and Gaza, I asked our Middle East correspondent what we can expect from Steve Witkoff.
Well, Steve Witkoff's visit seems to be aimed to address 2 points. One, the stalled ceasefire negotiations, and two, really responding to this huge growing international pressure around the starvation crisis in Gaza and the images that have been coming out, which has led to huge pressure on the United States and even from within some of President Trump's own political base in the United States. Steve Witkoff will go to Gaza today and apparently meet some Gazan locals and indeed inspect some of the GHF aid distribution sites. We presume that he'll see these aid distribution sites at their best. As you've just been mentioning, these are aid distribution sites that have been linked to countless deadly incidents. Indeed, we just heard from the United Nations yesterday that they've counted over 850 Palestinians who've been killed near these aid distribution sites. The majority are alleged to have been killed by Israeli troops, says the United Nations. The GHF and the Israeli military have repeatedly rejected that they do fire in a regular fashion on aid seekers and have said that they have just used warning shots previously. But by Stephen Witkoff going there and looking at these aid sites, what we understand is that the US intends to double down on this model, which is so controversial, and indeed try to increase its funding and expand its model at a time when humanitarian agencies are saying, let's bring back the old UN-led humanitarian aid distribution model.
And Emir, what do we know of any attempts to rescue the peace talks?
Well, we haven't had an official readout from Steve Witkoff's meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu here, but we understand they were discussing the ceasefire negotiations. We understand from Israeli media that there is an attempt to reformat the basis of the ceasefire deal. So instead of a temporary ceasefire deal that would release hostages, have hostages released in a staged fashion, in fact it would be an all-in deal where all hostages would be released in exchange for Hamas disarming, but also a permanent cessation to the war. Now, we don't understand what assurances Israel and the United States might give Hamas to say, if you do release all the hostages, which is essentially Hamas's only playing card, so to speak, what assurances Israel might give to say that it will lead to a permanent end to the war, which is something that Hamas is seeking in exchange for the release of hostages.